Hey folks, welcome to week 15 of DMD 105 Digital Design Foundations. This is the final week. This is the big end to the semester, but we still have a lot of stuff to do, so let's take a look. All right, so if we go to the week 15 module, we'll see here that we really have two things happening at the same time. We're continuing with our exploration and our introduction to Adobe XD, our final piece of software for the semester. And even though we don't have a project or an assignment that's tied directly to it, you have been expected to be sort of getting to know the program, exploring different things. And so we covered everything from the basic tool set to the workspace to the various palettes. We talked about laying out space in Adobe XD, the use of grids, and so on and so forth. So today we are going to pick up with the final topic in Adobe XD, which is typography. So the typography we're going to look at is specifically in Adobe XD, but typography in web design in general has to be treated differently than typography for print because, for one thing, it's interactive, and for another thing, there is something to be said about web-safe fonts, which we'll talk about. So to that end, there are these two videos to watch this week. These are your final consumables for the semester. First video are 10 rules of typography in web design, because whatever you've learned about typography in other classes is a little different in the world of web design, and so it's important to sort of get the basics. And then this guy here, Jason Santamaria, he was the sort of head of typography at Google for a long time, and he gives a really nice talk about web typography, which is a little less technical than the first video, but sort of gives you a nice overview of how typography is important in the world of web design and how it functions a little bit differently, and some sort of tips and tricks about that. So we're going to get into that, and then we're going to hop on over to Adobe XD and look at how the type tools work, talk about laying out type, and we'll talk about web-safe fonts within the Adobe environment. Now, of course, the other thing we're doing this week, independent of this, is we are finishing up our final project, which is your Vector Celebrity Portrait, which is Project 4, which is done in Adobe Illustrator. That is to be turned in this week and presented. So remember, over in announcements are our final presentation guidelines for the final day that was assigned to us as a class. So be sure to check those out. Make sure that you turn in your final Vector Celebrity Portrait into Canvas at the time that it's due, and of course show up for the final presentation and be ready to give your presentation. So a lot of stuff going on in sort of a short final week, but that's okay. You guys can handle it. All right, so let's take a look at Adobe XD here. So you remember we were working with this test site in Adobe XD, and we were really talking about this in terms of columns and grids and how to lay out space. Now, there are some typographic elements that are already in here, of course. The type that is used for the uppermost navigation, the type that is used in the header banner, the type over here, which has both a headline and some body copy. This is just lorem ipsum, but it's placeholder for body copy. And then we have some footer text going on at the bottom here, which tells us a little bit more about the location and the contact information for our fictitious donut shop. So we're going to look at a version of this that allows us to put in some of the type ourselves, and we're going to work with this in a second. Before we do this, though, let's talk about typography in the world of Adobe. So if you have the Adobe Creative Cloud, of course, mounted and installed on your computer, you have access to the Adobe Creative Cloud handler, which is this right here. Now, normally, we are probably used to going into here to keep our software updated, to download new software, and those are the main things you can do. And of course, there's some information over here about different apps based on categories and uses, so you can learn about the different pieces of software and applications from desktop to mobile, etc. However, other things that you have access to through your Adobe account, of course, are your work. If you are storing work in the Adobe Creative Cloud cloud storage, so you can certainly do that. And then you can also discover other people's work out in the world of Adobe and learn different tidbits and workshops and how to do things. There's training videos like this one going on down here. So all sorts of good stuff there. And of course, there's the Adobe Marketplace where you can buy or download various plugins, which are sort of added features that you can add to your various software. So lots going on over here in the world of Adobe beyond just the applications. But sort of hidden on the application tab is the Manage Fonts section. I almost feel as though it should have its own tab up top because, frankly, access to your fonts through the Adobe Creative Cloud system is really important, and so hiding it over there is a little misleading. So this is my account, of course, and you can see here that these are all the Adobe fonts that I have activated and that are available throughout my Adobe software as well as on my computer for the Adobe software. Now, to be clear, these fonts are not the same fonts that are available in my fonts folder on the hard drive of my computer. Those fonts came loaded with my computer. They may have come along with other software like Microsoft Word or something like that. And so those are physically mounted onto my computer and are available for pretty much all of the various software that I own. And that's traditionally how fonts are handled on computers. However, in the world of digital design, and particularly in the web, fonts are usually served through a web-based server system. And so there are a variety of these. Google has their own. I mentioned about Google Fonts a second ago, and you're going to watch that video. And so that's one way to do it, is Google has their own collection of fonts, which can be attached to and mounted to various web projects. And of course, Adobe has their own as well. Now, Adobe owns hundreds of different fonts, and you can access them all through the Adobe Font Collection. But you manage your fonts here through the Adobe Creative Cloud Manager in the font section. And you can turn your fonts on or off. If you want to see a preview of what they look like, simply click the font and you can see it over here with the typical quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, and there's usually a few versions of it that sort of takes you through the different styles. For instance, this font, Mano Banner, has a few different type styles, has 4 different type styles, so you can see them in action. And so there's a variety of things you can do to manage your fonts, turn them on, turn them off, have access to them. When you open up new documents from into an Adobe piece of software that has fonts in it that maybe you don't have on your computer, it will link them to your Adobe Font Collection so you can have access to them. You'll see that there's some examples here of ones that I don't have downloaded on my computer, like this one here. So this font, Contiga, I have it on my computer in regular, semi-bold, semi-bold italic, and bold, but I do not have it on my computer in regular italic. And that's because I opened up a project from a student that was using this font, and so it linked it to my account, which is great, so I can see the font, but I don't have it on my computer. So if I want to use that, I can always hit the download button here, and that will make it available throughout my computer for me to use, which is great because the Adobe fonts come as part of your Adobe subscription, but it also gives you access to them in other venues as well. Now, of course, this is just the fonts that I'm managing for my account, but if I go up here to browse more fonts, it will open up a web browser and take me to Adobe's font website, which is fonts.adobe.com. And when you come on over here, it gives you a little welcome screen, tells you a whole bunch about how it works, and then you can dive into their collection, which is vast. They have thousands of different fonts. You can search for different fonts by styles, right? They have different types of styles over here. You can also go by classification, serif, sans serif, script, black letter, etc. You can choose specific anatomical properties of the fonts. Remember our type anatomy quiz that we took, right? So this comes in handy over here if you want to learn about sort of different weights, different widths, different contrasts, then you can narrow down the collection that way. So unfiltered, there are 167 pages of fonts with 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, so that's 12 on a page, 12 times 167. Somebody else do the math, but that's a lot of fonts available to you. And of course you can buy packages of fonts if you would like and get access to those above and beyond the ones that come with your Adobe subscription. The ones that come with your Adobe subscription, of course, are free along with the subscription, but you can also buy additional fonts. Typekit is another web-safe font collection that used to be an independent company, but Adobe purchased them at a certain point, so now those are also available for embedding into coded websites. So remember, in Adobe XD, we make prototypes. We don't make actual coded websites. But if you were building a coded website, either by coding it by hand or doing it in Adobe Dreamweaver or something like that, you can embed fonts this way. And there's a tab for various foundries. Now, a foundry is a company that designs and creates fonts, right? And the people that work at Foundries who design fonts are referred to as fontographers. So if you want specific fonts from specific font designers, you can get access to them here. Some are free, but most of these you do have to pay for. But through the Adobe Fonts website, it gives you access to all these different options. Even if you just stay with the Adobe Fonts collection, which again are free for you to use, it gives you a lot of different options. And remember, these various fonts aren't just singular fonts. For example, this font right here, Halyard, has 48 different type styles. That's a lot of type styles in one font. So you can have tons of options, and you can really sort of check all this out. You can even plug in some sample text here, type out whatever you want, and it will demonstrate the font of your choice for you in that in what you wrote. So it's pretty great. Okay, so you can explore more of this on your own. Obviously, if you continue to take classes where we use Adobe XD and we start building other web products, you'll learn more about this. But I just wanted to introduce it to you so you can explore and play around and get to know the world of typography in Adobe. So let's hop back into Adobe XD here, and we're just going to take a look at some typography and how it was used in our test site here. So there are multiple occurrences of typography here in this test site. We have this paragraph of type with a headline. We have this large bit of headline style type that is used in the top banner here, right? Then we have the various navigation bits of typography over here in the navigation system. Then down in the footer, we have some typography that is embedded into the footer bar to give further information. And even inside of our logo here, this bit of typography here for the word Dave's is active typography. I could change what it says if I wanted to. So all of those are active occurrences of typography here in our test site. Now, the choices, of course, are pretty straightforward and can be treated exactly as you would in Adobe Illustrator. In fact, you can even create type treatments in Adobe Illustrator and copy and paste them into Adobe XD if you would like, but you really don't have to because the type tools in XD are pretty advanced. So, for example, if I just choose this type box over here and then I highlight, say, for example, the headline about our donuts, you can see over here in the sort of golf caddy palette, it converts to everything that's about that type. So you can see that my font choice is alternate Gothic number 1D, and it's set at 50 points. It is the regular version of the font, right? That is the type style. And you can see that the letter spacing is at 0, which basically means default, the way it comes out of the box, as it were, the way it was originally designed. However, the leading, the space between baselines, is at 70, right? And if you're not sure what the standard leading is on any font that you chose, over in Illustrator you choose Auto, or 0, which will give you the automatic leading or kerning or letter spacing. Here in XD, you just simply type in 0 and then hit Tab, and it will default to whatever the standard is, which was 70, so that works out nicely. So if you're not sure what it is, you can always check it by putting in 0 and then hitting Tab, okay? Now this is aligned to the left, naturally, and it is a type box. As you can see over here, it is set as a fixed size type box. And then I don't have any forced type styles on it. And then if we go down to appearance, you can see that the opacity is set at 100%. The fill is this color right here, right? Which I actually had eyedroppered from somewhere else. So I just eyedroppered the color from the bar at the bottom, but of course you can change it to whatever you want simply by eyedroppering another color. So if I wanted to make it that color, I can change it to that. Or if I want to eyedropper it again, eyedropper only allows you one sample at a time, so you have to go back to the eyedropper to change it again. But if I wanted to make it that pink color from the logo, I can pull that over there too. So easy to just pick it up and drop it off, okay? And then the last bit of information about this bit of type treatment is that it has no border, no shadow, so it's pretty straightforward, right? Same thing with the body copy, right? This is just lorem ipsum naturally, but you can see here that it is Avenir at 22. The type style is book. Avenir comes with a number of type styles, as you can see here. So we're going with book on this one. And then you can see the fill color and so on and so forth. The fill color is actually this dark red color, which is the outline of the donut graphic. But it looks almost black, but it's just sort of a dark red. Now for something a little fancier, we have this type treatment here, best donuts ever. And so here we've done a few more things to it just to make it more graphical. So the type is all round Gothic. The type style is demi. The font size is 125. The leading is not important because it's only one line of type, so there's no other lines of type below it, so it doesn't even matter what it is. It's center justified. And you can see here that it's set at automatic width, which means it was dragged out to the appropriate size here. Now the fill is set to white, but you'll notice that you can see through it in some instances, right? See how you can see the bits of color from the photograph behind it coming through it, and that's because there has been a blending mode applied to it. So the pull down menu right above the fill color gives us access to those common blending modes, which we should be familiar with from both Photoshop and Illustrator. So blending modes are a great way to give it a little visual personality. I did add a white border around it to give it a little extra sort of definition and set that white border at 2 pixels wide. And by doing that, by checking off the border, you can then go ahead and adjust the sort of personality of the border as well. And that's all very similar to Illustrator. And you'll notice that all those effects don't really become visible until I get away from the type tool and just go back to the black selection arrow and unclick on something so that now I can see everything, and that sort of creates that effect. Now differently, these bits of type over here that make up the navigation, fairly standard throughout. We've got all rounded Gothic, the size, etc., etc. There are no blending modes attached, but here we added a shadow to it, and you can see that aside from choosing the color of the shadow and the opacity of the shadow, you can adjust the depth and thickness of the shadow if you want, and then this sort of gives it that effect. So they're real easy to apply. Now some of these features are available in Illustrator too, but I have to say the interface in XD, maybe because it's just the one palette that keeps changing depending on what it is you're choosing, does such a really good job of just handing to you the tools that you need and keeps them very simple. So anyway, that is the basics of typography in Adobe XD. A lot of the basic setup is similar to Adobe Illustrator. We went over some of the simple tools. The first video we went over Adobe XD, and of course we just talked about Adobe fonts and how to access those. So from this point on, hopefully you are enjoying working with Adobe XD. If you end up in any other digital media design classes, you will definitely be using this program again, and so keep practicing with it. It's a good thing to know. All right, so other than that, I will see you at our final presentation, our week 15 final presentation for your vector celebrity portrait. So go ahead and get that done, and I will see you guys